Hey everyone, it's Wendy, and for this project I'm using two 11 by 14 frames, an 11 by 14 canvas, some fairy twinkle lights, and some Jenga pieces. And the first thing I did was took out all of the insides of my frames. You have to be really careful with these frames because they're kind of like that foam material, so just be careful so you don't crack or break it. I'm going to use my needle nose pliers and pull out those little tabbies from the back, and then I'm going to take my Jenga pieces and using some permanent adhesive, I'm going to start gluing those to the very edge of the back of my frame. So I'm making sure that they're flush, and I'm going to go all the way down on one side, and at the end I'm going to have a little bit of leftover. So I had Michael J take that outside and cut that. But if you have those little snips or whatever they're called, miter shears or whatever, use that and you can cut this down. And then when I get to the end of one of the short sides, I'm just going to butt those up together at the ends or at the corners so that you're leaving a little tiny space open at the bottom because there's not quite enough room, but that's not going to matter. You won't even see that. And then at the other end, we're going to leave a little space open for our cord, and then finally finish that fourth side with more Jenga pieces. So then I had Michael J take both of my frames outside to paint with my Krylon matte white spray paint, but for some reason these frames don't paint a true bright white like the paint is, so we'll address that later. So then I printed off this pretty silhouette from Google Images. I'll have it linked in the description box below, and then I'm going to use my painter's tape to tape that onto the back of my glass. Then I took my black chalk paint and I'm just going to start tracing everywhere where it's black so that I get the silhouette of Mary and Joseph on their journey to Bethlehem. So we're doing a collaboration today with some sweet friends, and I'll get into that later, but we all chose a Christmas song to do as the theme of our video. So the song I chose is called Breath of Heaven by Amy Grant, and I'll have that song linked in the description box below. But it's such a good song and kind of gives you an idea of what Mary might have been feeling on her journey and going through this whole process, knowing she was carrying the Son of God. It's such a beautiful song. You guys have to listen to it. And I know there's a lot of projects that have to do with the Nativity, which is what Christmas is all about, but this was a little bit different, and I wanted to show this side of things and what Mary's feelings or perspective of things may have been. So that's why I chose this song. So getting this to be completely blacked out, it's going to take a whole lot of coats. So when you think you've already done enough and you put white paper under it, you'll see you haven't done enough, so you can go back and get those areas you missed. And then if there's any fine tuning you need to do, just use a needle or some kind of pokey tool so that you can get those little nooks and crannies. So now I'm going to take my canvas, and I wanted to do kind of a watercolor effect. Again, you know, I'm not the best painter, but I will say I think this turned out so good, and I'll tell you more about that later. But I'm gonna take some white chalk paint and I'm adding a bunch of water to it and giving a base coat on my canvas to kind of get it wet and, I don't know, kind of try and make it look like a watercolor using acrylic paints. So I'm just gonna start putting some browns and greens into my painting. I want this to look like, I don't know, we're in Israel on our way to Bethlehem. So I don't know how to explain anything that I'm doing here. So I think you're just going to have to listen to the music and enjoy my version of a watercolor painting. But feel free to fast forward too if you don't want to see it. Okay, so I know it's not a Picasso and it's not a Bob Ross, but I think I did a pretty good job, you guys. I really love it in a non-boastful way. So anyway, to get rid of that kind of off-white color of my frame that came from the spray paint, I'm going to use my white chalk paint to get it that nice, pretty, super bright white that I love so much. And then once I get it painted and it's almost dry, the black frame that I used is going to be the front of our piece. So I used my sanding sponge to get some of that black to peek through so that it looks distressed. So now I'm going to take some permanent adhesive, and on my front piece, my front frame, I'm going to take my glass and I'm going to put it inside there with the paint towards the top, if that makes sense. So in the front, it's going to be the smooth part. And then I'm going to take some hot glue and my fairy lights, and I'm just going to hot glue that into the teeny tiny little crevice of my frame so that you can't see it from the front. You'll just be able to see that beautiful glow once this is all put together. And I'm going to start on the side where we left that little gap for our cord, and that's where the battery pack is going to come out. And so I'll start with that first light in that left-hand corner. And then when I get to the end, there's going to be a little bit left over, so I just folded it over and I'll have a few more lights at the bottom, and the other three sides will be distributed evenly. And then once I get it all done, my lights are in, I'm going to make sure that I didn't leave any fingerprints or strings from my hot glue, and then that's ready to be put onto our other piece. So for our other piece, I'm going to take that same adhesive glue and I'm going to put my canvas inside and make sure that's stuck down really well. And then I'll put some more adhesive on top of my Jenga blocks and then close it all up with my top frame. So in my original design, I had planned to cut out some vinyl letters for the top of my frame there on the glass, but I didn't want to cover up my work of art once I was done with it, and I was so happy with it. So I decided to just leave it off, and I'll show you what it looks like without the words, just the way it is as I have it done here. But there's so many beautiful lyrics to this song, and some of the ones I was thinking of putting at the top was "Breath of Heaven, Hold Me Together," because that's like the chorus of the song. And then there were other parts of the verses like, "I have traveled many moonless nights, cold and weary, with a babe inside." And then another one was, "Do you wonder as you watch my face, if a wiser one should have had my place?" Oh, gosh, it just gets to me because she had to have so many questions and fears about all of this, just all kinds of them. So I finally decided I didn't want to put it on the glass, and I actually had to talk to my good friend Linda at FaithChick777 DIY by Design. And so we figured out together what we could do. Well, she didn't know this idea, so she's going to see it today. But I decided to add this piece of wood, and this was the only one that was already painted white. And can you believe it? But Luke 1:48 is actually on this piece of wood. And that scripture says, "For he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on, all generations will call me blessed." So I don't think that was a coincidence. I think that was a little sweet sign from Jesus. So the verse we ended up deciding on, and this is what Linda helped me with because I just could not decide. It says, "Holy Father, you have come and chosen me now to carry your son." I just think that's so beautiful. And so I'm just gonna attach this piece of wood. I didn't paint over the bottom because that's a little sweet sign I can show everyone who sees this piece. And I'll just attach it with some permanent adhesive and some hot glue, and then it's done. Okay, so now for today's Christmas song collab. I am so thankful to Leanie at Crafty Leanie for inviting me to join in on the fun. I was just so inspired by this song and had it on repeat for hours and hours and felt so connected to Mary's heart. And I can't wait to see what her, Mia, and JC, Andrea, Kelly, and Janice have created with their song themes. Make sure to check out the whole playlist and give them some fa la 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 love. For our next Dollar Tree DIY, I picked up one of these egg holders. These are for, like deviled eggs. I like to call them heavenly eggs. And I know this seems totally whackety whack, but I knew exactly what I was going to make when I got this. And so Dollar Tree also carries these sweet little baskets. They had the gold and the silver rimmed ones, but I wanted this natural one. And so I also picked up a couple of cartons of the little eggs and then a glittery butterfly. Now these eggs are actually glued into the carton. I think you're supposed to keep them this way, but I just pulled them out. It would be a lot easier if you had some white ones, but since I didn't have that, I'm going to use what they had. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out what kind of faces and characters I'm going to be making. And I'm going to be doing a nativity, but kind of an original version with eggs. I love to show my grandkids and give them interactive activities with my decor that's pretty to look at, but also teaches about Jesus. So I went online and found some different nativity sets. Most of them were those peg dolls, or, are they pegs? They're called pegs, I think. Anyway, I took bits of the ones that I liked and I counted how many holes I was going to have available for each of the characters. And then when I got done with figuring out which characters I wanted to use, and not characters, I mean, they're characters, but the real live people that were in the true story. And then the openings that I had left over, I filled with little sheep. So I just used the paint colors that I had on hand, and I'm trying to make them a little bit muted but pretty. So it's really just different shades of beiges and browns and whites and off-whites. And then for the three kings, I used a little bit of crystal and some lavender and just got creative. I had no rules. I kind of had an idea of what I was going to do on each one, but it never turned out exactly as I had drawn them beforehand. That kind of happens all the time. But once I got the faces down and then went back in for their costumes or vice versa, I did one layer at a time or one color at a time, and then gradually just kept adding to them. There's really no rhyme or reason, but the final details I added with my gold paint pen and some of it in white paint pen. And then the last part is going to be the little smiley faces with my black Sharpie. I am going to go back and add a layer of Mod Podge over all of them. And the only bummer was my white paint pen wasn't all the way dry. So when I put my Mod Podge over my more mature graying shepherd and my donkey's white hair and mouth, they kind of started bleeding, but it's not that bad. And I don't know, I can go back and fix that later, I guess. But this would be a great project to do with the kids, something you can do as a family and really just soak into the meaning and the true reason for the season. And then for my angel, I took this butterfly and it kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies when I took it apart. So I edited that part out for you guys. So I'm just going to take the top part of the wings and turn them upside down, put them together with some hot glue, and then I placed them on a piece of cardboard and glued that to the back of my angel egg. And that one you'll kind of have to fold her wings to get her into the egg carton. And then I'm going to take my little basket, and I have a little bird's nest that I made a couple years ago for a spring project. I broke that in half, or kind of folded it in half, and took the backing out and stuffed that right into that basket, and that becomes our little manger. And then I placed all of my eggs back into my little holder with the manger and baby Jesus right in the middle, and then you can put the lid on, and now you have a fun little activity to go. So I didn't paint the plastic or anything because I thought that would be fine for the kids. And you guys know my thoughts about plastic. But to make the outside even cuter, I took a scrap piece of burlap and some linen ribbon from burlapfabric.com, made a sweet little bow and tied that to the handle. And then I took a self-adhesive tag sticker from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to write "True Story" on the little flag and place that right underneath my bow. And it's done. And here it is all finished in its mobile form. And here it is with the lid taken off. I just think these are so pretty. It was definitely a labor of love. There's my little smeared shepherd, but I think he just had a bad hair day. But this is something you can do while you're watching TV or listening to Christmas music like I was. Anyway, I love how this turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. So as you know, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were Jewish, and Passover was the annual feast commemorating God's miracle when he instructed the Israelis to take the blood of an unblemished lamb and paint it onto the sides of their doorways and to the top in order to escape the 10th plague of Moses, which was death of the firstborn of every household. And when death came, every home that had the blood of the lamb on their doors, death would pass over them, and that's why it's called Passover. Now, during the Passover feast in Jerusalem, Jesus was nailed to the cross on the right, the left, and in his feet. Or as scripture says in the Old Testament in Isaiah 53:5, he was pierced for our transgressions. And so when you hear Jesus described as the perfect Lamb of God, you see that just like the unblemished lamb and the blood used to save Israelis 3,500 years ago, give or take, God reveals the miracle of the crucifixion and how Jesus' blood is used to save us from the consequences of sin and death. And just remember, as Christians today, we believe in the same God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that only 3 nails distinguish us from our Jewish counterparts. I think St. Augustine said it best when he explained, "The Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed." So I have had requests over the years from some of our sweet Jewish viewers to do some type of decor for Hanukkah, which coincides with Christmas, but I've never had a chance to do it. You guys know I always run out of time to do everything I want for Christmas, but this time I'm making it a priority given everything going on in Israel. So I thought I would make a wreath using these beautiful Dollar Tree blue ornaments, an assortment of pretty blue ribbons and whites and silvers. I was planning on using this blue and white buffalo check ribbon, but it turned out to be a little too casual for how my wreath turned out. And I didn't really know how to do this, but I just started taking my ornaments and gluing them to my wreath form. And then once they were in place, I would turn it over and glue it on back so that they stayed snug as a bug on a rug. And I'm just gonna fill them up with the large ornaments first, and then I went back and put some medium-sized ones in there. I didn't quite have enough, and I wasn't really sure how much I was gonna need for this project, but I just went with it and did what I could. It's not perfect, but I think it turns out really pretty in the end. I pulled in some white ones, and those wouldn't fit through the little grids of the form. So I used my wire cutters and just kind of pulled those together and bent them so that it would go in there, and then I could glue them on and they'd stay put. So after I did my medium size ornaments, I'm going to add some smaller ones and just tried to cover as much of that wreath form as I possibly could. I don't end up being able to, but we'll fix that in a second too. So now I'm going to make a really big perky bow, and I have this blue glittery ribbon that I think, if I remember right, I got to make a cowboy's wreath, which was my very first video ever here on YouTube. So this was some leftover, and I just folded it over a couple of times. I had this white ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I wasn't sure if I was going to like this. It kind of looked like spider webs to me. But once I folded it over and put it in between some of these layers, it looked really pretty, so I used it. And then I found this other ribbon from the Dollar Tree along with some white grosgrain ribbon. This was, I thought, looked so much more elegant compared to the buffalo check. So I'm going to go ahead and use that as well. So I use a clippy to hold these together because I can't hold them all at the same time with one hand. And then I'm going to get them in the order that I want them and make the back loops larger than the ones that I put on top, so it's going to be going down in size. And then once I get them in the order I want, I'm going to take a chenille stem and slide it through there. And I was really mindful about getting all of my slits put into each of those sets of ribbons so that when I slide my chenille stem in there, they're all going through those slits. And then when I wrap it on the back and get it all tight, I'm able to move my loops around and get it into a nice big beautiful perky bow. So you can see here that I've got a lot of ornaments on my wreath, but you can still see some of that wreath form more than I want to see. From the top, it doesn't look like there's a lot showing, but if it's in real life and you're seeing it from the side or whatever, I don't want to see that metal. So I took some of this Dollar Tree silver ribbon that's super, I don't know, like really flimsy, which was perfect because I was able to use a needle and kind of thread it through my ornaments and cover up all of that wreath form that I didn't want to see. And it made it look even prettier, I think. So then I'm going to take now 3 of the little letter building blocks, some floral foam, a dowel, and some square beads. This was another one that I just didn't know if it was going to work, so but I was willing to try. So I'm going to glue my blocks onto my floral foam, and then using my knife, I'm just going to cut around my floral foam, and then I'm going to cut that foam into angles on all 4 sides of my blocks. And then once you get it cut down to the size you want, you can just go back and kind of mold it into a more rounded shape. And since I had to do this 3 different times, they each got better with every shot. So then I'm going to take my dowel and I'm going to cut that down using my big fat cutters, and I'm using my Hollywood to hold that dowel in place. I just stick it in there because usually if you're trying to cut a small piece, it'll go flying and you never find it. So I stick it in there and then cut with my cutters, and then the big piece goes flying but not as far. So then I'm going to take my little beads and hot glue those to the tips of my little dowel pieces, and then I was going to just hot glue those onto the top of, these are dreidels by the way, can you tell? And I was going to just glue them onto there, but I wanted them to be pretty secure, so I drilled little holes into my block, and then I'm going to hot glue those stick parts into my dreidels. And then I'm going to paint them all with my Waverly chalk paint in white. And that's going to seal that floral foam so that it doesn't flake away. So then I looked on the internet to get the symbols that are on the sides of a dreidel. And a dreidel, in case you don't know, I don't really know, but I didn't know how to play it. Now I do, but it's a little Jewish game, and you kind of spin it, and whatever it lands on, there's different things that you have to do, like you have to give money or take money. It's kind of like left, right, center. Do you guys know that game? So anyway, this is the Jewish version of left, right, center. Anyways, I'm going to take those little symbols, I'll cut those out, and I'm going to use my transfer method by rubbing my pencil on the back of the image, and then I'll trace around them onto my dreidels, one on each side, and they're customarily in blues and silvers. So since that's the color of our wreath, that's what I'm going to use. And then I have 3 cutie patootie little dreidels. You guys had no idea what I was making, huh? Anyway, I'm going to tie those all up with some string, and then I'm going to place that right under my bow and let them hang there in all their glory. And here it is, all finished, and I just think this is so pretty. I love my little dreidels. They're so cute. Anyway, I love how this turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. So I have a sweet friend and sister in Christ that I met a while back on Instagram. Her name is Anna, and she also has an Etsy shop. It's called HISWORKMANSHIP Designs. This is her flax and wool small business that I felt called to plug. It's not a sponsorship. I just love her work and her love for Jesus. And when I saw her adorable creation of the Holy Family that is now available in her Etsy shop, and then I saw a scrap piece of 4x4 from our back patio project, I reached out to her to see if she would mind me making a large-scale dupe of her beautiful design. So I had Michael J get another 4x4 from Home Depot because I only had the one piece, and he cut it down for me along with a scrap piece of 2x4 and a 2x2. Well, I cut that one myself, and I'll show you the measurements for everything in just a second, and you can pause and write them all down. And for Mary and Joseph's heads, I used $2 Dollar Tree bouncy balls from the toy section. I painted those with a mixture of Hello Hobby and French linen and Waverly white chalk paint. So here are the sizes that you'll need to make this project. And for Jesus's head, I found a 2-inch wood ball in my stash. So that was perfect. And remember, it's not hoarding if you use it. So I painted all of my wood pieces in my white chalk paint, including my scrap piece, which was already white. But I'm telling you, nothing compares to the bright white of Waverly's chalk paint. And then I painted Jesus's head in that same French linen and white mixture that I painted the foam balls in. And the little 2x2 that's Jesus's body, that doesn't really show, so you don't even have to paint that piece. And then once I get all of my pieces painted, I'm going to go back in with my sandpaper and get them all nice and distressed. So then I just hot glued Jesus's head on, and there was a flat spot on the ball. So I'm guessing this is an actual doll head, which you can probably find in any craft store. So anyway, I marked where I wanted my boards, and mine is 1 1/4 inches from the edge, and to attach them, we'll screw them in from the bottom of our 2x4. So here I am explaining to Michael J what I need done. So he drilled 2 pilot holes into each board and then screwed in some long screws so it's nice and sturdy. And I have to mention, we've been working on the garage, and look how pretty the countertops and stainless backsplash is. He picked everything out himself, and I think it looks so good. I'll show you more when we get it done, maybe after my craft room video. So now to assemble everything, I cut a little piece off of the foam balls so that they were flat, and then I'll glue those to the top of my posts. And there's a seam on the balls, so just make sure that they're on the side so that they don't show. So now I'm going to use some white nautical rope from the Dollar Tree, and on Anna's Mary, there's some pretty gold thread around the string on Mary's neck. So I'm going to use some gold Dollar Tree wire and wrap that around my rope. And I used electrical tape to keep the end from fraying, and then I'll hot glue that around her neck, and the ends will be hidden by her veil. And then I'll make more of a scarf for Joseph and let it hang down like Anna's. And those pieces of rope will eventually get crisscrossed once I notice it. So then for Joseph's head covering, I used a scrap piece of Walmart drop cloth and I folded over one side to make a clean edged hem, and I'll hot glue that down, and then used another piece of rope to keep it in place. And just secure everything with hot glue so nothing falls apart when you store it in the off season. And there were 3 pieces of fabric that I used from my scrap bin, and one was from Dollar Tree, and I didn't have to cut any of them. They all fit perfectly. So I was really excited about that. So this is the fabric from Dollar Tree, and it's super wrinkly, so I ironed it and made another hem on one side, but I didn't even glue that one down because it was ironed so crisply and stayed in place. And then I'll drape Mary's head and glue it down so that it's nice and flowy. And then for Jesus's swaddling, I used another drop cloth piece and gave him the old burrito wrap that I used for my babies, and then tied a piece of white string around him. And then for the little joy tag, I cut a piece of tea towel out because this was the closest thing to linen I could find in white. And I cut a few out in case I messed up writing joy, which I did in gray, and I did mess up. And you'd think 3 letters would be so easy, but I didn't like my spacing, so I just rewrote it. And then I used a needle to tie it onto that string, and then Michael J. attached Jesus to Mary with another wood screw, which I did not film, and I closed my eyes while I held his blanket open. And then Anna had a sweet little wooden star suspended over them with wire. So I used this Dollar Tree star ornament and I took all the pretties off and filled in one of the holes with spackle and then used 2 pieces of floral wire and twisted them together and then painted that with some folk art acrylic paint in the color pure gold. And then I painted my star in the same French linen and white mixture that I had left over from their heads. So then I fed my wire into the star and doubled it up so that it's nice and sturdy, and then used my needle nose pliers to bend in those pokey parts so that little fingers don't get hurt. Now I'm going to use a screw to attach my star onto the side of Joseph, and I put the loop around the screw and then tightened it with my drill. And then I'll use Joseph's material to cover up that screw and they're done. And here is our beautiful Holy Family all finished. This might be my favorite of all time. I probably should have kept my eyes open because Jesus is a little bit lower than I meant, but oh well. Anna put these in her shop yesterday, and as of this recording, there's only 2 left. But you're going to love everything that she has in her shop. You will not be disappointed. I hope you guys enjoyed these projects, and if you did, don't forget to give them a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. If you're not already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button down below, as well as the little bell right next to it so that you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. Be sure to check out the whole Christmas song playlist, and oh my goodness, take a minute and listen to the song Breath of Heaven. I have it linked below. Remember the reason for this season. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!